crash because it records differently to Teams. Okay, right. So we're going to go through Teams. So Teams, in Microsoft's words, is their unified communication and collaboration platform. A number of us across the organisation have been using it for quite some time, and I think the people that have really embraced Teams and what it stands for have really found quite a lot of improvements in the ways of working, in collaboration, and sort of the speed and efficiencies it brings to be able to communicate and collaborate with people either spread across the globe or even just only sat a few desks away. It does really speed up the way that you can work. So kind of what is Teams and how does it really fit together, and how would you use it day to day? So Teams really lives in the area of teams. But what is a team? So a team is made up of a group of people that you bring together for work or projects or common interests. So you might have a team for the actual team that you belong to. You might have a team for projects that you're working on, or you might have some sort of common interest that you're working on. So perhaps there's some social interests that you've got. So there's a running club you might want to set up through work. You don't work together, but you've got that common interest of running, so you can create a team to keep in touch and communicate and collaborate for that purpose. So when you create a team, each way to create a team, different ways, but the way out of the tin with Microsoft is there's an option down at the bottom to join or create a team down here. We're not following that exactly here at the moment. There's a separate Power Apps that's been developed to create the team, but it follows the same process. Basically, you want to create the team. What do you want the team to be called? What's the privacy settings for the team? How do you want people to be able to find that team? And then basically you create that team. So you'd give it a name. So for example, we've got the IT collaboration team here, and every team that you get has one channel to start with. It's the general channel, and channels, you really want to build them around a specific topic, like a team event or the department name, or things that are just for fun. But effectively, the kind of the golden rule that you want to stick with is only create a new channel when you've got a really specific purpose for that, because the more channels you create, the more spread out the conversation can get, and it can start to confuse people about where to be putting certain content or searching for information. Kind of the golden rule that Microsoft give is around no more than about 6 or 7 channels per team. But there are exemptions to that rule. I know the IT collaboration one here, we've got I think we've probably got about 15 channels, possibly more. You can argue that's perhaps too much even for what we're doing here, but I think it's working quite well. In each channel, that's where you can hold a meeting. You have your conversations, or you can just have bits and pieces of fun in there. So I'm just going to jump into another team. I'm just going to go to the Digital WOW Champions team, and this is the Teams channel that we've got in that team. So in here, you'll probably see a lot of posts from myself and John Nuttall, but this was for the digital champions across the group to share collaborations and learnings. So effectively, people can create a post. So if you've got, if you're using any sort of social media, it's pretty much the same thing. You create a header post, and then people can interact and write replies on there. You can have your usual reactions to posts, and I think the key thing here about the like reaction, which is kind of the default one, that doesn't mean that you like. It's not that true term of like. It's more of an okay, got it, understood, read it, affirmative type thing. So try and get into the habit of using the like as an acknowledgement. Not necessarily that you agree particularly with the post. That's where you can use some of the more sort of the reactions on here. But the like is more of a okay, I've got it, affirmative type button that you can use. But effectively, in each channel, the content revolves around what that channel's purpose is for. As I say, you can hold meetings in a particular channel, so it'll automatically invite all members of that team and members that are subscribed to that channel. You can collaborate with the files. So at the top here, you've got your tabs. So you've got one for conversations, which is where all the conversations happen. The next tab that you get as standard is a files tab. and this is where you store the files that are being created for that particular team in that channel. So each channel has its own area for storing those files, and you want to keep them unique to what they are. Effectively, these files are stored on a SharePoint site that sits behind that particular team. So you get quite basic functions to manage and interact with those files in Teams. But if you want to get to some of the more in-depth functions, you can open up in SharePoint and do the more advanced features around that file, such as permissions or moving things or renaming things. That's where you'd go and do that within the SharePoint. So the tabs at the top here, as I said, we've got the conversations and files. They're the ones that you get straight off the bat when you create a channel. But effectively, the rest of the tabs are shortcuts to some of the things that you want quick access to. So it might be some of your favorite websites. So in this particular one, we've got some it'll be a website that loads up to videos of teams that John would have curated from across the World Wide Web for us. So this is, a web browser now being displayed within Teams. So I've not had to leave, I've not had to open up another browser, and I can get to this content from within this tab up here. It might also be a shortcut to a particular file. So if it's an Office file, such as a Word or Excel document, again, you can open that and view that or edit that natively within Teams. It might also be another application. So I don't think we've got one on here. Yes, we have. So it might actually open up another application. So this is the Forms application, but you can put a link to another application such as Jira. Maybe you've been using Trello, or there's a whole host of other applications that you can natively add up here. So to add a tab, you just come up to here and there's a plus symbol, and you can choose Add, and then it will display the different applications that you can use to link to. So if you choose website, it will just bring a little pop-up and it will say what you want to call the tab, pop in the URL for the website, and then that will be displayed natively in there. When you save that, you get the option, it's enabled by default to create a post to the channel about that tab. So it'll just, if I created one here, it would pop up and say, Grant Luxford added a new tab, and it'll be whatever the tab name is and a link to it, just so it gives people that information that you've created that tab. But you can uncheck that if you don't want that post to be made to the team in that channel. As I said, there's a whole host of different applications. We're not going to go into the detail because it's more of an introduction, and there's even more applications. These are just the applications that we've approved for use here at the moment, but that's not to say that you can't add even more in other organizations. Now, as you can see, I've got quite a few teams on the left-hand side here. I'm just going to switch back to my conversation view. So I've got quite a few different teams that I'm a part of here. So I've got this one at the very top here with a picture of the penguins, if you can quite see that. This is just a testing team that I created for myself. So that's one of the things that I probably encourage people to do that are new to this, is just go and create a team. You can just have yourself there as an owner. You get a little bit of limited functionality when it's just you on your own, but it's a nice, safe area to play and test with. There's nothing to stop you doing that in most organizations, and then once you're finished with it, you can throw away the team and delete it once you're comfortable you've got all you need from it. But there's, you can be a member of a lot of teams. So by default, there's two sections: your teams and hidden teams. Effectively, any team that you create or join will be put into your teams, but if you perhaps aren't too involved with those teams, or they're no longer relevant to you, you can move them down into the hidden teams. So you've got your ellipsis menu at the end here, so you can choose that, and you can choose to hide, and that just moves it down into this section underneath. What that does is it helps to manage the notifications you get about content posted into that team. So you could, if it's a team that you don't need to see everything that's been posted in there, you could hide that down here. You will still get notifications if you have been individually tagged in a post, which we'll come on to in a moment. But you can move these down, and you can just sort of click and drag to move them around, he says. And it's not going to work now, is it? Can you not do it in hidden teams? Yeah, so you can click and drag to move them around on the other section, perhaps not in hidden teams. But if there's a particular channel. So in this IT collaboration one, like I said, there's a number of channels in here. So I'm working mainly in this channel number 8 and this digital skills training. So what I've chosen to do is on the ellipsis menu, you can choose to pin. And this is a feature you see across a number of different areas in Teams, but you can choose to pin that. And when you choose to pin, you know, it stays here in the team that it is normally in, but it just moves it up to the top into this new section if you've not had anything called pinned. And this is just a kind of another shortcuts bar to just hop directly into that channel that you've pinned. Once you no longer need to be using that, you can just click on that ellipsis menu and you can choose to unpin, and it will just remove it off those pinned favorited channels and teams. So when you're in a team, most people are in this IT collaboration one, I'm going to come down to the digital skills training, and this is how you communicate. You just start writing a new message. So down at the very bottom, you'll have start a new conversation, type @ to mention someone. So effectively you just start typing any new posts. And then you just click send, and that will post that up there. If you want to add a little bit more detail into there, I'd suggest using this format button underneath, and that'll just pop it out. It feels a bit more like composing an email then, and you're safe to press the enter key without fear of accidentally posting that to the channel. When you're not in this format mode, if you were to press enter for a new line, it'll actually post up to the team perhaps before you're ready to send that. So if you're posting something you know, of any sort of length, always best to use this little format option to break out. You've got the standard sort of formatting tools that you can use along here, so you can, you know, change the format and the font and the styles. You can decide whether or not it's just a new conversation. You can add a subject when you pop this out. Or if you want to make a bit more of an announcement, you can choose this option and it'll give you a headline, and you can add a background image from any photos that you've got, or change the color. I'm just going to change this back to a conversation. Teams and most of the Office 365 is on this evergreen platform, so they're constantly releasing new updates to Teams. So there's always new features that are appearing. So over the last few weeks, there's a reply option that's appeared, so you can actually set who can reply to your post. So by default it's everybody can reply, but you can change it so only you and moderators of that channel, which is the owners or moderators of that particular channel, can reply. So this is really good for controlling any sort of feedback. So perhaps if it's a particularly big team and you don't want lots of people to be replying, you just need that message to be out there, you could limit down who can reply. And another new feature they've released recently is about posting into multiple channels. So sometimes you want to share the same information but across multiple areas. So you now have the option to do that by choosing this option and then selecting the channels in whichever teams you want to choose. So you can post this into multiple locations. Any responses that are posted in reply when you've used it in multiple places are unique to that individual team. So if you've got a team that you post it into with 5 people and a team with another group of people, say 20, those two separate teams, the responses will be in their own separate areas. So there's no worry about, you know, certain responses being seen by different groups and teams. That privacy still is existing between those two different teams, even though you've chosen to post it into 2 locations. One of the other things, if you're used to any sort of social media, is you can @ people. So where am I? I'm in the IT collaboration, so I could @ anybody. So just type the @ symbol, start typing, and it will bring up names of anybody you might want to message. The other thing that you can do is you can @ the group. So you can either @ the entire team. I find the easiest way to do that is to type team, or you could type the actual team's name, but because I'm in a number of different teams, I can't always remember which team I'm in. You can just type @team and it'll bring up the team name, or you can @ the channel and type correctly. And when you choose any of those drop downs, it'll appear in this blue text. Just trying to think of somebody that's got their name still the incorrect way around. So once you've typed these up, you can also just delete sections of that. So that would still notify Chris Jackson. I've deleted the name Chris. Delete it completely, Chris won't get the notification. But say, for example, I don't want this to say digital skills, I just want it to say digital training. I can delete that middle piece as well. I've just moved my cursor around, press delete once, and that notification will still go. Some people might be wondering what's the difference between notifying the team and notifying the channel. So it's all to do with who has set this channel to show. So see, I've got these two hidden channels. These two hidden channels, if anybody was to at that Halloween channel or the IT asset sale, I wouldn't get the notification because I've chosen to hide those channels. So in some of the smaller teams that you're a part of, maybe you've got a department that you've set it up for, and you've got a number of teams in that department, you might have a channel for each team, and then you can tell people to hide or show the relevant channels, and that way you can kind of target the notifications. So once you've created your message, chosen where you want to post it into multiple channels if you wish to, you can then just press this send button, and that will post that up. So now everybody that's in this channel, which I think is pretty much everybody in the team, is now going to get that notification. And anybody that wants to reply, they should use this reply button just underneath that particular post. If they do it down here in a new conversation, it will create a separate thread. So you can see this is in its own, thanks Julian, you can see this is in that separate box to this one. So this is all in here. So that kind of takes us on to the notifications. So up in the top left-hand corner here, you've got the activity button. So I'm starting to get notifications, although I won't see them all because everybody, I'm looking at the post that it's creating. But up here, by default, when you click on activity, it will show you anything that relates to you. So anything where anybody's tagged you, or replied to a message that you're on, or reacted to something you've posted, or when somebody has tagged the team or the channel that you are a member of. And it's all in here really. Can get quite a lot. And there are some icons that kind of explain the differences between what there is. So you can, once you've started to learn what the different icons mean, you can kind of whiz through what the different ones mean. You can choose between feed, which is the notifications that other people have made that you want to read, but then you can also choose my activity. This is quite useful if you know that you've posted something somewhere, or you've shared a file or anything like that. This is a good way of finding what you have done. So I remember I posted something up to do with that piece of work you asked me about, but I can't remember where it was exactly. This is a good way to come and have a look at activity to find that. The other thing that you can do is this is the filter button, the funnel icon. It appears in quite a few places throughout Teams. You can use that to look for a particular thing. So if I use Nuttall, because you know he gets everywhere, doesn't he? I can see that as a thanks to John there. So that's activity. You get the little red, the general notifications red icon up there, and once you have seen that particular piece, it will remove that notification for you. Sometimes you can get a notification buried way back up in a stream with a response that somebody's put, and you have to scroll for days and days to clear it down, because I know some people like to have 0 notifications, but sometimes you do get one that is a little bit old and you have to go digging for it. The next one down on the bar is the chat function. So the chat function, so this kind of takes the Skype for Business and takes it forward one step really. You can have your one-to-one chats with people. So for example, myself and Ray have been having a one-to-one chat here around some of the discovery work that we've been doing. And you can see I've got some images in there, and the chat's persistent. So this is back from October. And I think that's one of the key big benefits over Skype, I find. The chat is persistent because you might have a chat with somebody, close down your Skype window, have forgotten about it, and then you have to come back looking for it or message them again and say, hey, can you remind me about that piece of information you shared before? You can find it in here. And again, each chat has a number of tabs. By default, you get these 4: conversation, files, organization, and activity. And again, this is quite useful in the sense that any files that you may have shared in that chat appear here. and this allows you to collaborate on them, and only you and that person that's a member of the chat can see those files. And then there's the organisation bar. It's not going to work, obviously, given the current situation, but this would show where that individual is in the organisation, who they report into, if they've got any team members that report into them. I'll find somebody to show you that in a moment. And activity. So this is a good way, again, of finding somebody. Let's use John, because John's pretty active. So I can go to activity, and I can see all the things that John has done in teams that I'm a member of. So only where I have the right privileges to be able to see that information can I see it, but I can now see where John's been posting things. So if I'm trying to find that file or that piece of information that John shared, I can come into this activity file and use that for that particular user, and it does appear for every member that you've got. So chat's one-to-one, but chat can also be one-to-many. So here's a chat that we've got for our Phase 3B team. It's got 6 participants. The people that are listed in there. Again, it's persistent. You get your files, and you can manage through from there. So to create a new chat, you can just, up in the top here, you've got the new chat icon. You click that, and it says, who do you want to start chatting to? So I'm just going to pick the people that I can see near me. So I've got Chris Jackson. So if I start chatting with Chris, it'll just bring up that existing chat that me and Chris have got. As you can see, we like sharing a lot of GIFs with each other. But let's say I want to add somebody else to this. So up in the top right hand corner, you've got the add people option. So I'm going to start to add in Phil Smith, because he's sat next to me. And I'm going to click add. I can add as many people as I want to that. Click add, and then it will create a brand new chat. So it tells me that Chris and Phil are in here. At the moment, this doesn't exist with the other guys because I haven't sent a message. But if I send a message now, that will now create a message and a chat with those guys. I get a little option to rename the group up here, because sometimes that's helpful. So we can say this is testing teams. Save that. And then that will change that chat name over here on the left, as you can see. So it helps us understand what that chat's about. Sometimes these group chats are really useful when you don't want to create a whole team, because maybe you've just got a short period that you're going to be working together. Maybe you're working on something specific. Hi, Chris. And they're kind of like really useful for a short-term mini team, if you like, because you get the files tab, so you can start sharing and collaborating, and you can add in the same tabs as before, some of the applications and websites, and it's pretty good. If you are going to use it like that, I'd advise, once it appears over here on the left, to choose the ellipsis menu and choose to pin that chat, and it will move it up into this pin section, so you can easily find that again in the future. Once you've got a group going, even on a one-to-one chat, you've got the options to have a video call, an audio call, share your desktop, and you can even add more people. Now, because we've got some content in this chat already, if I want to add other people, it's saying how much of this history do you want to share with them. So if I was to add Steve Cherry into this, I can say don't include any chat history, anything that's been talked about before. Steve doesn't need to see, or it's not of any relevant. Or we can include history from the past number of days, so perhaps you're talking about some sort of major incident, and actually Steve can really help with the last few days. You could choose how many days worth of chat, or you can include the whole chat history. By default, it's set to not to include any of the chat history. That's a really useful way to add somebody in. So Steve would get added in there. It'll pop a little message to say that I've added that person to the chat, and it tells you what history has been shared. So if you're all of a sudden worried about adding somebody's been added to the chat, oh my goodness, can they see that I said I don't like their shoes, you'll know whether or not you can. And anybody else that's a member of that team can add in anybody else to the team as well. Once you're finished with that team, you can choose to leave the team, and then once there's nobody left, it will all be removed. And you can choose to remove other people from the team if you wish as well. So that's the chat. I think one of the things actually that Mr. Kemp would ask me to really highlight is make sure you know who you're talking to and where you're talking. So if you're in a group chat or in a one-to-one chat or in a Teams channel, just make sure that if you think you're just sending a private message to somebody and you're accidentally posting it into one of the channels and everybody in that team can see it, just make sure you really are sure where you're posting that. So you can see you've got the chat icon up here is highlighted because I'm in this chat. I can see the team name. If I suddenly just start typing down here, at Phil, it's not going to send a private message to Phil. It's going to post it to that chat that everybody can see, same as if I was a channel in a team. Okay. So that's kind of covering the main ways that you collaborate with people in here. So it's pretty much the same sort of functionality in a team, in a channel, in a chat. Is there any questions? Anybody wants to post anything up or come off mute to ask any questions about this so far before I move on to the next sort of features? Okay. Thanks, Phil. So the next thing, search. So one of the things that I hear quite commonly from people is finding information in Teams is difficult. If you don't know where to go and look, it can be difficult to find it, which is true, really. But there is a really powerful search feature within Teams. It's not that obvious, but it can be a bit tricky to understand the finer art of it. So wherever you are in Teams, at the very top here, you've got a search bar, which is also a command bar. But effectively, you can use this to search for anything. As soon as you start typing, it's kind of one of those autofill boxes. It will try and suggest certain things. But up here, you can start to search for things. So let's just pop into the Teams here. So we've got a file section in this decommissioning area. Let's go into the key documents and just going to go find a. Let's hope there's something. Is there something going to be in here? Is there a file? Here we go. Topics batch table. Okay. So I've been working with this file, let's say, last week, and now I can't remember where that file is. So I'm down here in another area. I'm searching away. I cannot find it for love nor money, but I know it's called something to do with topics. So at the very top here, I can just type in, if I can actually type, topics, and I press enter, and that's now going to take me to the search section. So over in this left area here, it's not too obvious, but you've got 3 headers. So I'm looking for messages, so it's looking in all messages. So that's messages I might have had in chat or messages I might have had in Teams, in channels. I can also choose to look for people, or I can choose to look for files. So we know that I'm looking for a file. Now, the search filter funnel, which I pointed out earlier, as I said, it's pretty persistent in a number of areas. So I can filter down. So I remember that this file was in the IT collaboration team. So I just click on this so I clicked on the filter, choose the team that it's in. So I remember it was in the IT collaboration team, but there's too many channels I can't remember. I do remember that it was an Excel file, so I can choose it's an Excel file and press filter. And now it's going to redo that search with that information. So now what it's doing is it's found all of these files that contains the word topics. So the reason it brought these back is because the word topics is listed in here. So again, it's still quite tricky to find that specific piece of information in there. But what I can do again is I can further filter, because I remembered that Dinah had been working in that file, and I can filter. And again, it's going to limit down to those particular files that Dinah has modified that contain the word topics in that channel. So there we go, I found it was in IT collaboration shared docs, so I can jump across into there. Julian, it looks inside the entire file. So you do need to kind of be able to pin down a bit further for some of the search terms, because you can see this master list up here doesn't have topics in the title, but in that document it does contain the word topics. And because most of these files are now being stored upon SharePoint or OneDrive, it does search within the content of those files as well. So that's search. I mean, I could talk a little bit longer about it, but that's kind of the key principles. At the very top, let's just close down that file. At the very top here, you've got the search function. The other thing that you can do is there's commands in there. So if you press the /, it'll bring up all the sort of shortcut keys for various things. They're all pretty self-explanatory. Let's see if /org, because we mentioned that earlier, is going to work. So I've chosen /org. It's now asking me to choose the person that exists. So I'm going to choose John Nuttall and then hope organisation works. Here we go. This is what organisation looks like. So again, the search bar has helped me find John Nuttall, and I can see who the people are that report into him and what the reporting line for John is as well. So this bar at the top, search and commands, is pretty useful. So press the slash key and you can see the commands on there. Help's a good one. It'll take you straight to the help for Teams. And I seem to remember there was a keyboard shortcuts keys. So slash keys is pretty good as well. That brings up all the different keyboard shortcuts that you can use within Teams, which also sometimes is a bit of a reminder of the different functions that you've got within Teams as well. So that's the search and commands section. The next thing that we're going to cover is meetings. So you can hold meetings within Teams. Pretty much like we're holding a meeting now using Skype. Teams is the way that you can hold that meeting. So the simplest way to schedule a meeting in Teams is from within the calendar section. So this basically brings through your Outlook calendar, and you can schedule a meeting. So I'm just going to choose that new meeting option. Pretty much the same sort of functionality you see in Outlook. What do you want the title of the meeting to be? Where is the meeting going to be held? Now, it's automatically held in Teams when you've selected to create the meeting through the Teams client. If you choose to create it within Outlook, you should have the little plugin that allows you to choose to hold that meeting in Teams. A bit like the Skype for Business button that you guys should be familiar with. You should be able to see that Teams meeting option in Outlook. If not, you can come into Teams and schedule it. So the location by default would say Teams. It doesn't show you it here because you're within Teams, but you can choose one of the rooms. So it's linked into the Outlook's directory, so it can show all the physical rooms that are set up on your system. Choose your start and end date. If you want it to be a recurring meeting, you can choose to repeat that. Again, the same functionality that you see in Outlook. I'm not going to set that as repeating. You can pop your details into that meeting as usual. Kind of the different functionality that you can see is what channel do you want to meet in. So if you want to meet in a channel, you can choose the team that you're a member of and the channel that you want to meet in, and it will automatically send the invite to all members of that channel of that team. So if all the members of the team are in the channel, they'll all get the invite. But like I said before, if some people have hidden that channel, they won't get the invite specifically, but they can still get the option to join. They receive an email invitation as well. You don't individually get their responses back. You'd have to come into the meeting into Teams to check that. But you can also still invite people through the usual routes of choosing them from the address book, or if you want to invite somebody that is external, you can just type in their email address as well and it will send them that invite. So once you've filled in the details, you click schedule, standard sort of things. Up in the top left, those eagle eyes, there is an option, so you can have a meeting or you can have a live event. Live events are a bit more advanced, which we're not going to cover here, but that allows you to do more of a lecturer to a audience type thing, more of a production, more of a less interactive version of a meeting. So meeting is what you want to go for most of the things you're doing. Once you're got your meeting scheduled, the big push from Microsoft at the moment is basically meetings. They're kind of a tricky thing at the moment in the sense that we spend over half of our working life in meetings, and apparently meetings aren't very productive. And there's actually kind of 3 stages to a meeting. Everybody knows about the actual meeting that you're in, so that hour of time that you're going to sit there and talk about some stuff. But actually the meeting actually begins before the meeting's begun, because there'll be prep for that meeting. Maybe you're going to pull together an agenda, maybe you're going to pull together a list of actions to do. You can actually do all of that within Teams. So it's a really good way of allowing you to do that pre-meeting prep with those participants. So some of the meetings that I've set up in Teams, as this the next training that we've got for OneNote later this week, it's automatically put through all of these people that I've invited. I didn't invite all these people individually because I sent their meeting invite out to the channel. But if I wanted to chat with everybody in that meeting, I can choose chat with participants. So I'm going to click that button. I'm not going to post too much because it's going to create quite a bit of noise for everybody else. Is it going to switch me into the chat? Or is it taking me to here? It should take me to the chat with everybody in there, which it hasn't done. Here we go, live TV. Go back to here. So this is the OneNote. Let's see, chat with participants. Is it going to work this time? No. Okay. What that should do is take you to a chat with all those participants. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, because we've got the daily update meeting. So it's the same thing here pretty much. It will take you into that chat with everybody that's been invited to that meeting, and you can start interacting. So this is where you can start messaging individual people, the group. You can upload your files, and when you upload the file, it's that shared collaborated file. So maybe you've put the agenda together as a kind of a straw man, and somebody else in the meeting is going to add details to that. You can work on those files in a collaborative way. I don't think we've got anything in here, no, have we? No. But that's kind of the idea that now you use Teams for your meetings, because you can do the pre-meeting prep together, collaborate in the team space. When the meeting's actually running, you can actually dip into those files, and we'll see that over some of the training sessions that I've got later on, because we'll be running them from Teams itself. And then when you're in the meeting, you'll be which I can't really do because it might kick me out of the Skype meeting, but you'll be able to share files, collaborate on them, work together. You'll be able to create actions through Planner. You'll be able to bring up websites or log into other applications, and together as that team in that meeting, make the most use out of that time. And then when the meeting actually finishes, that's not really the end of the meeting, because there's still things that happen after the meeting has finished. So this is the post-meeting experience. So again, those files that you've created, you'll continue to update and work on. Any of the actions that you created in the meeting will be in that planner area for that particular meeting, and you can continue to show progress and track them and mark them as complete. And if it's a repetitive, recurring meeting, you'll be able to constantly keep on top of that. So it really is quite a powerful way to schedule meetings. Even if you're physically, a local team of you, even if you're physically meeting in the same room, it's still quite useful to create the meeting in Teams, because then you can collaborate pre, in, and post meeting. There are a few different types of meeting that you can kind of do. So as we said before, so this little chat group that I created with these guys earlier, we can just create an ad hoc meeting right now. So I could just do an audio call, or I could down here at the bottom schedule a meeting. Or if you're in a right pickle right now and you just need to meet now to fix it, you can just come into the calendar section, click meet now, and it will just spin you up a meeting instance, and you can drag people into that meeting as you need to. You get all the features of being able to collaborate with files and bring in applications, and you'll have the recordings if you need to record the meeting, and all the notes and chat that's happened. Just very quickly, I'm going to glance over calls because it's not something we've got fully featured yet at the moment, but you can do one-to-one calling as you know, similar to how you use Skype. If you've got the fully enabled voice functionality, you can do outward calling and receive inward calls as well. The thing I was just going to quickly talk about was apps. So it's down here, same place, but basically the apps for Teams, this is really what sort of brings the collaboration to life, in the sense that you can plug in various different applications. There's a whole list of things. There's things that are natively part of Teams and the Microsoft 365, O365 suite, but there is a whole host of things. And like I said, this is just as a limited view of the things that have been approved for use here. But pretty much anything can be plugged in. And then you can really start to improve the productivity and collaboration by never having to leave Teams. I know it's a bit frustrating swapping backwards and forwards between different areas, but it is quite a really powerful piece to get those apps included. And the last thing that I'm just going to kind of talk about before we cut to the Q&A is just down at the bottom there's a help. Now normally I'm the first person to groan when I accidentally hit the F1 key in an application and help pops up, because help generally isn't helpful. But in Teams they have spent quite a lot of time in getting help working quite well. So a very quick whistle-stop tour. So the first area within help is the topics. So you can find a lot of content in here about Teams. And they've revamped this probably 4 or 5 months ago. Before, it just used to be a long list, almost like a contents of the world's longest novel of different things. But now they've kind of grouped it together into various areas. It really is good training content. You've got the training section, which is a series of videos that Microsoft have pulled together. I think it'll take you about 40 minutes to watch all of them, but they're grouped into specific areas. So messages or files, they're no more than about 2-3 minutes in the majority, and they are really quite quick, get you on the right track, get you going, get you moving, rather than you've got to watch a 45-minute video, which this will be, of everything start to finish. This is a really powerful way to find out what's going on. And like I said, it's an evergreen product, so it's always being updated. New things are being added, things are being changed. Pinning your favorite channels, that used to be called, it's now called pins, but it used to be called favorites. They've rebranded that, retermed it, and it works a little bit better than it did before. So it's worth keeping an eye on the help section. And it's also worth keeping an eye on the what's new section. Basically, it's the features and changes they've made. And this pretty much there's at least a change once a month, sometimes 2-3 times a month. New things, fixes, improvements happening all the time. So it's worth having a little flick through here as and when you can. And then the only other thing that I'm going to mention about is up here in the very top left-hand corner, you've got 2 arrows, the back and forwards buttons. And it was actually Mr. McCormack that taught me about these, because I'd never seen them because they were so tiny. I know we're all shocked that Mr. McCormack knew something before I did, but you know. And he's not here to defend himself, although I am getting the look. So the back button literally switches between the different areas, which is really useful when you're in a file that you're collaborating on and you want to switch back to a chat with somebody, which is frustrating. I'm the first to say that when you're in an Excel file editing something, you need to flick back to that chat. Often I have my mobile phone device with the chat open so I can have the 2 screens together, but this helps you just to flick backwards and forwards between the chat and the file. Okay, the file has to relaunch and go back into edit mode, but it's still a quick way to get backwards and forwards. So those 2 buttons up there does save me a lot. So that's kind of covering the main sort of intro to Teams. Should cover everything to get you guys going. Thanks for listening. I'm just going to stop the recording there, and then we can just jump into a Q&A if anybody's got any questions.